All right, hello everyone, and welcome to what's going to be another podcast, another episode of Beyond Spraying Pro 1000. I am Spraying Pro 1000. I haven't done this in a while, blah blah blah. You already know the rules and all the other stuff. So I just kind of wanted to jump in today because I have a little bit of free time. I also am a little bit more motivated to do it. There's been a little bit of stuff. I mean, there hasn't really been like anything super crazy or whatnot. Largely, the only thing I really have to say and to talk about are I guess disappointments, if that's a good way to start it off. I mean, I know I hate to come on the podcast and immediately talk about things that are bad and things that aren't particularly good, but yeah, fuck it. That's pretty much all I got. So the first and probably the biggest thing that I would want to talk about is Saints Row 2022. So Volition decided to remake Saints Row, or I'm sorry, not remake. They decided to reboot Saints Row 20 in Saints Row 1 in 2022. And needless to say, it's been a mess since the day they announced it and they showed off, basically almost anything about the game up until today, which is launch day. Pretty much, it's been a disaster, right? When it was first announced and people were like, "Oh, we don't really like the direction," "Oh, this doesn't really feel like Saints Row. Oh, this seems like a very, weird, like just the dialogue just doesn't really match with it and everything." Because Saints Row, if you don't know, is like a parody series. So Saints Row came out, I think, in 2006, and basically it was kind of like a counterpoint to like Grand Theft Auto at the time. And I think Saints Row 2 came out 2 years later. As like a counterpoint to GTA 4. So a lot of it was like, intentionally like satirizing the open world crime genre, to being able to take a step back and laugh at some of the stupidity of it and whatnot. And almost any Saints Row fan I know says that after 2, 3, and 4 weren't really that great. Well, I think they just had a Halo moment where now even the worst entry in the series gets treated like it's way better because now with the new thing that they have is so bad, they have to take a step back and say, well, shit, back when we just had, Saints Row 3 and 4, at least you could tell like they were made with some amount of care, or they were made, to feel in line with the original's tone of the series. The modern one is not necessarily woke or anything. It's not necessarily like crazy off the top. It just feels like off. It feels like the dialogue is over the top and cringy from the little bit of it that I've even seen. It just seems like it's over the top swearing or like basically like millennial memes, which could be funny if it was done well and written well. Um, I've heard people complain that the story is very barren, the characters are very two dimensional. There's no growth, there's no evolution, there's not really anything else. And I mean, like, I just feel like in a genre where you have so much time to really flesh out and explore the characters, it's a shame that that's kind of like almost the same thing that I really felt in GTA 5 a little bit. Um, Back when I was playing, like think about like one of the biggest games I could think of that like blew my mind when I played it was Grand Theft Auto 4, because once I actually sat down and played it from start to finish, yeah, the gameplay is frustrating because there's so much, like retrying a mission will take you like 5 minutes if you have to go buy armor and do everything. But at least on the flip side of it, GTA 4 has a really, really good story. It has a really good overarching narrative. One of my favorite things about it is that, Nico Bellic as a character comes to this alien land. He has to get, integrated with all these people. Integrated with all these people. And, from there, he starts forming allegiances. There's player choice. And really, it's up to you, how you feel about certain things. And I mean, like, obviously, for gameplay purposes, there's almost always usually a one choice is better than the other. Like, for instance, killing one guy, like, I think halfway through the story gives you his apartment, whereas if you don't really get anything for it. But I mean, like, it is what it is, right? Like, in my opinion, there's just a certain way to play it, but that's okay, because I'm sure that other people find other options to be better. But that's the beauty of GTA 4, is that it had a very overarching narrative. You felt like Nico was a compelling character. Yeah, people remember it for the fucking bowling meme, but beyond the bowling meme, it actually has a very deep and interesting plot. Interesting plot. Now, I don't know what happened. I didn't feel like 5 had that same appeal. I'm not sure if that's because they, took and not only that, 2 years after GTA 4, You know, you had Red Dead, which is, in my opinion, one of the best storytelling experiences I've had in an open world game. From start to finish, I think Red Dead interested the shit out of me for a time period I didn't really care about, for a genre of, you know, movies and stuff I didn't really care about. You know, that's the glory of a good type of game like that. Is I didn't really care about cowboys, the time period, the 1910s, or anything like that. But what they did is they told a compelling story and backed it up with good gameplay, at the time, graphics, and you know, great music. That's really what matters more to me. But you see what I mean? You see how like an experience of a game can be built up as like the sum of its parts. It becomes greater, which, you know, mathematically doesn't make sense, but, you know, theoretically does. That's one of the things I really like about video games. The new Saints Row just seems to be like a bunch of generic, boring missions from like the 30 or so minutes of it that I've seen. And like maybe that would just be, well, I don't know because I haven't played it. But a lot of people seem to have that opinion. And I mean, like, if they're saying it, and, you know, even the Saints Row fans are saying it, then I'm just going to kind of default to what they say. I could totally believe that Volition tried to cash in on a big IP name one more time to get a bunch of people, you know, suckered into buy. And they did every playbook in the book that was you know, like with Star Wars and any of these other franchises where the companies know they've changed it beyond what the original intention was with it, or beyond what the fans originally liked about it. They did the same thing. They attacked the fans. This was like a couple months ago, I think almost a year ago, when they first revealed it. You know, people had like a mixed response to it. So what did they do? Did they say, yeah, hey guys, listen, we understand that maybe this is not up to speed, but we're going to take your thing into account. We're going to see, you know, if we can, you know, make things more to your liking, right? And no, of course not. They didn't do that. Of course they fucking attacked the fans. They were like, oh well, if you don't like it, you know, it's whatever. You know, like it's. I don't know when this became like the MO at video games and movies and any entertainment medium, is like, if the fans don't like something, you attack them. But like, I don't know when it became the MO at half of these studios to make a, you know, take a very beloved IP, right, and then ruin it, and then just and obviously this is always subjective. Someone will always like something out there, so like this is totally subjective. But I'm noticing a trend in the last decade, right, where they take these things and like half the fan base is split on it, and or sometimes, if they're really unlucky, the whole fan base hates it, right? So like a perfect example of this would be Resident Evil, right? Like the Resident Evil TV show on Netflix, which by the way got canceled, unsurprisingly, after one season. So what the fuck was the point of it? Did not feel like Resident Evil. That's actually another topic I have on here. I guess we could segue into that since I didn't even write Saints Row as a topic. The Resident Evil TV or Netflix show comes out, what, like almost half a year after Welcome to Raccoon City. So to give a little bit of context, Welcome to Raccoon City, without really spoilering it, because you can't really spoiler it because it's based off the first two games, is like a combined telling of Resident Evil 1 and 2, which, if you know anything about Resident Evil lore, doesn't really make much sense, because Resident Evil 1 has to take place canonically before 2, so there's like something to melt down into. That's like the whole tension of 2, is that they ignored all the plots, or all the plot line of Resident Evil 1, and they just flat out told the STARS team, like, hey, we don't know what you're talking about, you guys are crazy, and whatever. Like, so they combined two games that are on the opposite ends of the timeline, when they actually should have just had 0 and 1, or just have 1 by itself, and just remake it for, you know, people who don't play games. Because Resident Evil, I don't think I would say Resident Evil's hard, but like, if you're just a Joe Blow, right, even very easy with all the puzzles and backtracking, and, you know, the Crimson Heads, right, could get annoying. I could understand that, right? You just, if you want to just boil it down to a movie, I mean, Resident Evil is kind of meant to be a movie series. If you go look at the original trailer for Resident Evil 1, or I'm sorry, it's when you boot the game, I think, you see it's like a movie intro where they have the characters, the real life actors in their cosplays, basically like showing off for the camera. Because Resident Evil at its core was supposed to be like a cheesy 80s zombie movie, you know, or at least like a cheesy, like, you know, 80s, you know, all the action of 80s and stuff like that. And I mean, obviously after the complete smash hit of Resident Evil 1, it went from there. So of course the Netflix show So I'm sorry. So of course the Netflix movie, the Return, Welcome to Raccoon City, has almost nothing to do with the games. There's no tyrant. The characters act not really like how they would normally be. Like, yeah, Leon is kind of goofy at points in Resident Evil 2, but I wouldn't. They turned him into a bumbling idiot. It's hard to believe he survives, honestly, especially since Resident Evil 2 just got one of the most fire remakes I think in horror game history. Um, and I don't know, like most people probably would say put 2 and 3 together because, narratively speaking, 3 starts, 2 begins and ends, and then 3 finishes, right? But I digress. It almost felt like it had nothing to do with the movies. Who knows if it's getting a sequel? It ends on sequel bait. It has its own weird plot twists. You don't get to see almost any of the classic, you know, Resident Evil monsters, and the zombies run like they're in fucking DayZ. So it's kind of like the whole point of Resident Evil is that they're supposed to be, at least in the early games, they're supposed to be like Romero style shuffling zombies, right? Like that's the whole point. If you don't do that, then it's not the same. You don't see Neptune. You don't see, what is it, Black Tiger, right? You don't see Tyrant in either of the settings. There's no Tyrant in the Resident Evil 1 part of the movie, and there's no Tyrant in the Resident Evil 2 part. Like it just it's a mess. But it was like at least somewhat canon, not canon, but it was at least somewhat drawn from the fucking games, which is the whole point. Resident Evil, the Netflix series, has nothing to do with that. The best part of that whole series is, what's his name? Fucking Lance Reddick. And the reason why is because Lance Reddick is just a good actor. He takes the role of Albert Wesker, right? And there's like a whole weird plot line and stuff about there being multiple Weskers and whatnot. And it's just, it just isn't great. I'm not gonna lie to you. The main characters end up doing so much stupid shit that you just kind of hope that they die, honestly. And I feel like they do stupid stuff on purpose, and it's just kind of like, I don't know. It focuses on this thing. Okay, I'll say the one couple of things I like is that there's a reference to Lisa Trevor, but then they reference her in a manner that suggests that she got infected by the G virus, which is not really true to the games, but whatever. There's a reference, one of the main characters is a descendant of Dr. Marcus, which I thought was probably like one of the most potent things that they had in the show. Was like, well, let's have a what if scenario. Like if Dr. Marcus had a daughter, or I think it's his granddaughter, whatever. Dr. Marcus had like kids, and they wanted revenge against the world for essentially destroying their father's legacy and getting him killed and assassinating him. And at times they imply that the original games have taken place, but at other times they also imply that things were different or whatever. It's impossible to piece together, like especially if you know the lore of Resident Evil. Like it's impossible really to even figure out like what's where, and there's apparently Wesker dies in a volcano or something, which is an obvious reference to Resident Evil 5. I almost said Resident Evil 9 because it's a 2009 game. It just feels weird, and it feels to me more like they didn't really lean into the Resident. Like you could have renamed this show, taken out the Resident Evil references, as few of them as there are, changed Lance Reddick's character's name to like Doctor something else, and it almost would have just been a different series entirely. Like the majority of it has nothing really to do with Resident Evil. It's just a bunch of people, 2 sisters, in the present, or I'm sorry, in the past, because this show alternates between past and present so fucking much. It's like, God, just please stay with one timeline, right? Like let's flesh something out before we jump timelines. This it's a mess. It's a terrible idea. Well, it gets greenlit because Netflix greenlights terrible ideas, and then they hype them up. And you would think with a series with as much prestige and as much respect and a fan base as big as Resident Evil, they wouldn't do that, right? They would treat it with some amount of respect. Of course not. Fucking course not. Of course they wouldn't. Of fucking course they wouldn't. So, yeah, it's not getting a season 2. So, like Death Note, which was a movie fairly, but, now they're redoing and remaking Death Note or whatever. I have no faith in that at all because the last Death Note wasn't good. It was a bumbling fucking joke. L does weird things. They turned Light from a charismatic, super smart teen to like a troubled, like almost school shooter type. And that's not a problem with any of the actors. It's just the writing. It's like, Why would you do that? The whole point of Death Note is not is that Light is charismatic, that they would never have suspected him to do these things because he was on the way to being a somebody. He had a life, and then the ego problem is what drove him to do what he could do. And that's like the whole clash of wills of Death Note, is that you have Light on one side and L on the other. Needless to say. And then obviously the show goes off from there. That's why I think Death Note Season 1 is pretty much the best one. Regardless. Yeah, I just really personally feel like Netflix takes a lot of shit. They hype it up to get people either to get mad or to get ready to super simp and defend for it. And then they just do shit with it. Because there's no way that these people couldn't take, maybe like 5 hours, right? And go watch like some YouTuber's in-depth recap of like Resident Evil like 0 to 4, right? There's no way. It's impossible. Like it's not like back in the day, when the internet didn't exist, or right, where the internet was like in its, no one probably remembers this besides people who grew up with it, right? It's probably a whole generation of kids and teens who don't know about this. But, back in the day, like let's say DSL timeline, right? Like you could maybe like, you would be afraid like, oh, well, my boss wants me to beat 6 Resident Evil games so that way I can know the story, right? And you don't have to do that. You could just go on YouTube, or you could go on Wikipedia, or you could go on the Resident Evil Wikipedia. You could do all 3 and you could get the story. You could say, okay, well, obviously we can't have 20 puzzles, so you just remove all the puzzles out of the playthrough, period. I guarantee you, go on YouTube. There's got to be commentary-free Resident Evil playthroughs. You could still do commentary, right? But like, if let's say you needed to not have anybody over it, there's ways to figure it out. So they just don't care. They just don't do it, and they don't care. And predictably, when it gets shit on, I feel bad for the actors, unless they go out and attack the fans, in which case you could go fuck yourself. But I feel bad for the actors. I understand like putting it on your resume saying, yeah, I was in a Resident Evil TV show. Like, that's fine. That's why I don't fault none of the actors for any of it. Especially Lance Reddick, he's heavily involved with a lot of gaming stuff. He's one of the main characters in Horizon. And I thought that's like my favorite performance of his. It's so good. I have to watch John Wick and all the other things, but I absolutely adore the shit out of him, and especially at least Zero Dawn. He's not really in Forbidden West too much. But, when he does appear, he has presence, he has authority. That's one of the things I really like about his character, is that he's a very well done, well acted, well written character. And, in contrast to Aloy, I mean, Aloy's writing in the second game is a little weaker, but Aloy in the first game, oh, it's so good, man. That's why I love that shit, man. I had such a good time playing Zero Dawn that I was blown away by how good it was, Well, that's why I'm going to remember that game. 2017 was a lit year, on a side note. But, I don't, like, I feel bad because his acting talent was wasted here. Like, it's not even a matter of, because a lot of people want to distract from it and say, like, oh, well, people are just mad because, I don't know, insert some reason here. They made fucking Wesker black or something. How about you have a character that's just well written, and it doesn't matter what race he is, Like, because then it's one thing to race swap a character, right? I always point out that, like, it worked with, like, Nick Fury, right, in the Marvel movies, Samuel L. Jackson, but that's because Samuel L. Jackson is a good actor, and he can bring almost any character. He's talented. He could bring any character to life. You know what I mean? Like certain people can make an entire movie worth watching just because of who they are. So, like, what was the movie that just came out? Day Shift with Jamie Foxx and Snoop Dogg, right? Fucking awesome. Because you know why? Because it's Snoop Dogg. Like, he's just a charismatic, funny guy. That's like one of my favorite things about him. He makes good music. He's a good actor where he's applicable, because he shows up and he portrays his character with, the Snoop Dogg aesthetic. It's kind of a feedback circle, right? Jamie Foxx is a good actor. That's what I mean. He's like, one of the best parts about some of this stuff is being able to have those strong personalities come out in your characters. That can bring them into life. There's so many movies that I like that just Will Smith is in it, and then Will Smith will bring the character to life, whether it's a serious movie or a movie that, I mean, obviously critics will fucking slaughter his movies because he gets really, like, bad roles. But I think that every time he has a role, he brings it to life. He really gives it a real refreshing take, and that's one thing that I really do like about it, personally. And, yeah, I mean, to say that is whatever. So it's not really anything with the actors. They just make a bunch of things, I guess, for people to hate watch, and then they cancel them after one season. Like Cowboy Bebop, they had like I want to say, what was her name? The lady who plays Faye, like went on a whole, not like a whole crusade, but like a whole like rebuttal thing about the fans not liking it or whatever. Like, bro, people, especially anime fans, right? I found are very anal about the stuff they like. Okay, and I butt heads sometimes on like dubs versus subs. I personally don't mind dubs, right? Because I don't speak Japanese. I always say, well, you have no idea. The person in the sub could be giving one of the worst performances ever. You don't speak Japanese. You have no fucking idea. But like, I get it, right? When you take something and convert it to live action, I guess people just want to feel like it's contributing something. You know, like it's actually decent. It's adding something to the lore, or maybe providing a fresh take on something. You know, and beyond that, I mean, like, if you're gonna do something, like, they just want to feel like it's not like check boxes being like just marked off. Like, okay, we had this cringe laughter scene, because I really think it's a result of the fucking MCU and the Marvel movies just going nuts over the last couple of years. Like, everything has to have like a funny reaction moment where we, like, you know, blow our lids and laugh at something every like 10 minutes. I don't know. And this is why I don't really like Marvel movies, because I feel like they're not really, like, to say they're not serious is kind of disingenuous, because they've never been super serious. But I feel like one of my favorite things about the Marvel Netflix shows was that, yeah, they had some funny moments in it, right? Like, there's a what are you talking about Willis joke in is it Daredevil or is it Luke Cage? I forget. But like, even beyond that, like, there's still an overarching narrative. That's why I love that shit, man. I'm really salty that shit is over, because like, it was really good. Like, yeah, the shows weren't great, but you could tell there was definitely an effort to make like a concentrated narrative that didn't feel like ridiculously like cringy or bad or like forced, you know, for people to just show up and say, I'm watching this. Like, I feel like, again, it's like the hyping of the enjoyment of the product, and not really the enjoyment of the product. You know what I mean? Like, you're supposed to be excited and, like, I guess, tweet and Instagram that you're watching this thing, and not actually stop to wonder, like, is the thing I'm watching any good? You know, is the thing I'm watching like any fun for me as a fan of something? Like, do I feel like, you know, there's something good coming from it? And like, usually I feel like the answer is no, which is why I don't really watch anything. Now, the Sonic movie is like one of the few exceptions to that, because it's one of the few inverses to this rule. Whereas most companies, I feel like, just want to shit on things and just make quick, easy bucks. Um, when they want to make quick, easy money, just like dumping something out and saying like, oh, well, here's Cowboy Bebop, and you watch it and it has like nothing to do with Cowboy fucking Bebop at all. You know, like, yeah, like, then you could flip on it and say like, well, the Sonic movie is the opposite. They actively listen to feedback, and there's a huge like industry like counter narrative against this. They made fun of them in The Simpsons. They made fun of them in general. Like, you see the Sonic movies get review bombed, and I really think that there is a huge push for them to not listen to the fans, which is like kind of ironic, right? Like, if you're gonna make any sort of content, right? If you're gonna make like a show, a movie, a video game, you'd want to listen to what the fans want to some degree, right? Like, as much as people shit on Ubisoft games for having, things on the overworld to do, right? Like, I wouldn't sit here and say like an Ubisoft game like Assassin's Creed is not worth the money. It's very much worth the money. It's just, is it like super fun to most people? And on one hand, a lot of people will say no, but then on the other hand, Odyssey and Valhalla have been some of the most, productive and most profitable games in Ubisoft history. So clearly someone likes it, right? Like, on some level, I like it, but like on some level, people like it. You know what I mean? It's not like it's whatever. Like, these shows come out, they get review bombed even by the critics. The critics don't even come to fucking simp forwarding and push the ratings up. So then we could have one of those moments where like the fan ratings are super fucking low, but the critics have said it's amazing, like Last of Us 2, or whatever other thing, you know what I mean? And I think that's the growing divide between critics and consumers, is that consumers will see something, that is making fun of or tearing down what they like, or they're using it as a method to push propaganda into bullshit, the same all political modern day talking points. And then fast forward, and then like sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the critics destroy something, but the customers will be fine with it. And I think there's a growing divide between that, because it's a growing divide that ultimately it's kind of collusion. They want to push product, right? If you go out and you see like this game got a 5 out of 10 and the community gave it a 3 out of 10, you're going to sit there and say, well, maybe I don't want to buy it. And for some games, they're cool with that, because then they could use that as an excuse to never make another one. And then for other games and TV shows, you'll see like the fucking critics or the customers will come out and say, wow, this game fucking blows. It's like a 2 out of 10. And obviously everything's hyperbolic, right? To some degree. But like then the critics will come out and give it like a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. And that's what happens with your Last of Us. Well, they don't really do it with TV shows and shit. I feel like they know that they can't get away with it as much on TV because, I guess on some level you can argue that a video game is more replayable, right? Like you could come out and you could replay even the worst game like 10 times in a row. Like video games inherently have more lasting appeal than movies, just by virtue of being something that you could replay and redo things in. But I feel like after a certain point, you just have people like basically covering for these games so they could move product, and they could continue to do that over and over and over again. And I feel like once a year we have something like that. Here we don't. I mean, here we just have a TV show that was so far off the fucking basis and it had nothing to do with Resident Evil. They could have called this show anything. They could, and that's my biggest thing, is that they know, and this is the same thing I said about Halo, right? They knowingly called these shows Halo and Resident Evil to try to incite people from those respective fan bases to come out and watch it. And I'm sure to some degree it was a huge success, right? The Halo TV show, I think, is getting a season 2. Resident Evil is not, because it was... I mean, it is kind of worse than Halo, which is quite a thing to say, right? There was a huge, like, push in the fan base to say, well, maybe we were too harsh on Halo 5, because Halo 5 is such a shitty fucking plotline. But at least you could tell, like, when they made it, they were definitely trying to force 4-player co-op, for sure. But when they made it, it felt like they were trying to add something to the universe, right? They were trying to add something to the Halo mythos and the Halo lore, right? And I would argue that it works out, because in Halo Infinite, it has a good story. I actually finished that, believe it or not. So, when like, that's the thing I really think that a lot of companies just don't understand. Like, there's an intent that you can really get behind in most media. So, like, when they make the prequels of Star Wars, right? George Lucas comes out and after making, this goated hero's journey of the original trilogy, right? Everybody's seen it. Everything references it. It's one of like the biggest movies of all time. It's one of the biggest trilogies of all time. Everyone knows it. $1 billion IP, tons of great stuff coming from it. A whole 50 years of merchandising, TV specials, and now, Disney Plus shows, more movies, more games and stuff, right? There is a heartfelt difference between there's a heartfelt difference between when Lucas made the prequels and when Disney made the sequels. You could tell Lucas he fucked up a little bit with the prequels. I'm not gonna lie to you, he did. They're not amazing, right? He's human, but he fucked up, right? So like Jar Jar, everyone will always fucking talk about fucking Jar Jar Binks. And then they made the Gungans completely broken in lore. They're actually really strong warrior people, which is, I think, fucking hilarious. I think that's kind of a real-life retrospective thing that they changed, so that way the Gungans aren't all interpreted to be like Jar Jar. Whatever. Every time Jar Jar comes on screen in the Clone Wars, I fucking groan, because I know stupid shit's about to happen. But, they had fun in the Clone Wars. The Clone Wars we should talk about another time. We should have a podcast about that alone. He fucked up, right? I think that the whole pacing of the original, the prequel trilogy is off, right? I think that Anakin should have been older, or if they had him, they should have had a time skip. I think they need to completely rehash episode 1. I think that after he leaves, there should have been a time skip, and then Qui-Gon should have trained him a little bit, right? I get that the whole point is that he didn't train him, so he didn't have that father figure. I feel like you should sacrifice that point, have Anakin be older, and then that way, one, it doesn't seem like Padme is like basically creeping on like an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old. And 2, you could expand the plotline. Now, obviously, the Star Wars fans are fucked up. They did fucked up things to the prequel actors. It's bullshit. I don't agree with that at all. They did fucked up shit, right? I think that they have a really rabid fan base in both directions. And I don't know if that element is still there the same way now that it was 20 years ago when these movies were new. But it was fucked up what they did to Jake Lloyd and Jar Jar's actor. I disagree with it. I fully fucking throw that under a bus because it's if nothing else, you should be mad at Lucas for writing it. Shouldn't be mad at the people acting out the thing. If they're just acting it out, it is what it is. You know what I mean? Fine, but whatever. And then Disney comes along and Rey does everything. I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, every time I think, well, maybe I'm being too harsh on the fucking sequel trilogy. Like, once every 2-3 months, I'll be like, because now it's far the fuck out of my mind. I forget half of this shit that happened because it was forgettable, right? I start to think to myself, well, damn, was it really as bad? And then, like, maybe I'll go look at a couple clips or whatever, or I'll think back on it, or I'll talk with my friends, and then I'll remember, yeah, this woman who sat on a desert for fucking 20 years gets in the Millennium Falcon and knows how to pilot it immediately. And we're just supposed to, like, just say, well, that's normal. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Like, the only thing I will say that exists in the prequels, which is why there should have been a time skip for Anakin, is when he blows up the Sis gunship. The big, I don't know what they're called, those big fucking saucer ships, like the ones that he flies in with R2. I've been told that R2 assisted and did 90% of it, which I could believe. It's a little bit believable, but it's not really great. It's kind of like he did all this by himself and the rest of the Naboo squadron is just trash. It was just to put him in an action scene. I get it. It's fine. It's not fine, it's dumb. But, like, that's like the whole trilogy with Rey. And it's mind-boggling to me that I guess people just don't see it this way. Like, you have one person who, yeah, makes a flawed work, right? But despite his flaws, you could tell he wanted to add something to his original god-tier goated work, right? Like, Lucas is gonna go down in history, obviously. Everyone knows this is not debatable, really. And then on the other hand, you have a corporation obviously filling in diversity checkboxes and hitting up all the fucking tickers and everything and just patching in all the holes and saying, well, here's everything that this chick does and she's perfect and there's no struggle, there's no suffering. Everything that she does, she's just a god at. And that's it. And that's the movie. I'm not kidding. That's all 3 of their movies. And they basically pushed fucking Finn to the complete side. They ruined all of his plot lines to facilitate hers. And at the end, they didn't even really have anything. I mean, it's whatever. It's a mess. And I think that that's the growing divide, is that you could tell the intent behind how a work is made really reflects on it. So to wrap this all back to Saints Row, you could tell that Volition really just wanted to go out and just milk the fucking Saints Row name one final time. And this is no fucking, like, mind-blowing, like, theory or something of mine, because you see other game franchises do it a lot too. Like Mirror's Edge. Remember when Mirror's Edge was like the hottest thing in '08, and it was like one of those games that showcased the power of next gen with the lighting and the graphics, and the gameplay was unique and everything. And you fast forward, all they did was remake it. For what? For nothing. And then they never made a sequel. They just milked it one final time. Dead Space 3. EA does this so fucking much, it's not even funny. Dead Space 3. Let's put co-op in it because co-op is big. Let's ruin the horror aspect so it's more accessible. Let's put in microtransactions so you get fucking materials to upgrade your guns to go through the story. The story is glitchy. We had tons of problems in that playthrough years ago. I never replayed it. Why? Because it's like just this weird Godfather 3 end of trilogy like bullshit that ends on a fucking sequel bait for a sequel that never came. And now they're just remaking Dead Space 1. I'm sure the remake will do well, but it's kind of like, but why? Why did we need to do this? That's what I'm talking about. And there's tons more. Let's milk this franchise one final time before we fucking shutter it for good. And if you look at any of these B-tier franchises, that they kind of are very comfortable doing it, unless you're like THQ Nordic, where you just pump out everything, right? Which is totally, I hope they never stop, right? Because that's totally awesome. And I just feel like there's a growing thing to do that. And Saints Row is just the latest in a long line of fucking games where they just, kind of put stuff on the pyre, right? And that's it. And then they just don't care. And now, who knows if they'll ever make another Saints Row. I mean, to be fair, you could argue that the last Saints Row that people really liked was back in '08, right? Saints Row 2, which is like, everyone talks about that as being like one of the best games of that year. And everyone talks about it as being like such a really amazing game. And it's, 2022? And they've had 2 Saints Row games and I think a couple DLCs. And now they have this. And it just, even the difference in quality between like, this and 4, right? I just think it's really interesting to watch it happen. But more importantly, I don't want to see people's franchises get destroyed like this, because I know how it feels, right? When I was, you know, I'm a big Spyro fan, obviously. I've had to watch the death of Spyro multiple times. And then we finally get something good out of it from Toys for Bob, and I'm just blown the fuck away. I'm damn near in tears sometimes thinking about how good that remake is, how much they brought, you know, my childhood back to life, and how much, you know, interesting, and like it's crazy to me. And they're like the scant few details that they left out, like flipping the Atlas pages, fine. And then, you know, they just kill the studio. They move them to Warzone. It's heartbreaking. It really is. It really fucking broke my fucking heart. I know. But yeah, speaking of the Resident Evil TV show, I know I've ranted for like half an hour now. Speaking of the Resident Evil TV show, IGN USA versus IGN Japan gave, actually, I most of my fucking shit is now Twitter links, by the way. I feel so lazy doing this, but I mean, like, at the same time, no, I don't want to open settings. At the same time, I feel so lazy doing this, but it is what it is, right? Like, I'm gonna, hold on. Dude, I fucking hate this. Thank you. Okay. I feel lazy doing this, but it is what it is, because you know what? I feel like it's at least worth talking about and worth bringing up. Let me close that a little bit. I have to fucking get the trending bar almost out entirely. Okay, there we go. Transition over. Lunar Archivist. Can we just replace everyone at IGN with staff from IGN Japan? Basically, it's the difference between, I think on the west we have IGN USA, and then in the east we have IGN Japan. On the east, on the right. What did I say? West and east. I mean, technically it is west and east, right? So on the left you have IGN in America, and they just look at this. Yet Netflix's Resident Evil is getting review bombed on IMDb because they dared cast a black Wesker and focus on his children as leads. There's no difference between Heisenberg and Lady Dimitrescu's bickering or Billy and Jade's rivalry in the aftertimes, except one is less threatening to demographics who've forgotten what they try to tell you that you don't know what Resident Evil is about. That's how fucking ballsy these fucks are. They try to tell you, oh shit. There we go. Sorry, I'll fix that. Whoops. They try to tell you that you don't know what Resident Evil is about. Like, could you imagine the fucking gall to sit there and sit through 12, or what was it, 8 episodes of this fucking massively, like, flippant fucking show that constantly alternates between 2 fucking stories, neither of which are any good. I guess the only thing I could say is that the past timeline technically references the most out of the actual series, but then you come over here and people are telling you, you don't know, they dared to cast a black West. No, dude, people love Lance Reddick. Even in the show, that's the only thing. Even the fucking Japanese think that he's the best part of the show. The Japanese think that he's the best part of the show. He really is the only good part of the show. And then the lady next to him is, like, Marcus's, like, not wife, his fucking granddaughter? No, his daughter. I think it's his daughter. I'm pretty sure. And he has a grandson in the show as well. And meanwhile, in Japan, they're like, the video game version is Albert Wesker on the left, and the Netflix drama, they're similar in that they have 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. Yeah, they are almost 2 entirely separate characters. And it's crazy to me that, like, it just feels like, I don't know, man. It feels to me like I want to read shit from the Japanese people, because 1, they don't fucking condescend to you, and 2, they don't have shit fucking taste. Yeah, it got reviewed by, it didn't even get reviewed well by critics. So, I mean, I guess he's talking about everybody everywhere. But everyone knows this is fucking bullshit, because nobody really liked this show. I mean, the vast sentiment behind it is, this is terrible. And I mean, like, if you look at the fucking Japanese one, they flat out say, like, B-class drama just borrows the name Resident Evil. And it's Resident Evil in name alone and almost nothing else. 4 references to a video game that I guess someone on the fucking team played 0 and 1 and 2, and that's it. And I guess 5, because who didn't play 5 when it came out? It was like one of the most successful Resident Evil games in history. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm basically trying to talk about. It's like, you go here and you say, well, I don't like it because it's poorly written, the story is completely all over the place, the characters are stupid and making really dumb decisions, and like the plot is just really awful. And then you come out and they basically kind of call you racist. Thank you, Matt Donato. You prove the fucking meme. It's like you say, well, this is poorly written, it's badly done, the characters are not at all in line with how they act in the game. You called it Resident Evil, you made it nothing like Resident Evil. Oh, you're racist. This is what I hate about American shit, dude. This is why nobody takes them seriously anymore. This is why people mock them. Yeah, people go to them for information, but I don't think people really like opinions like this. Especially when, like, who is this written for? Really, stop and think to yourself. As a business, this guy wrote on behalf of this. Who is this written for? Who is it written for? Is it written for people who are fans of the series? Or is it written just because some check marks on Twitter might quote tweet it or whatever, and they could bitch about racism and sexism in the video game industry again? You know, like, who is this actually written for? You know, if you're a fan of this thing and you don't like it, you're just supposed to like everything that ever gets put out and never question it, never look at it funny, never, critique it. And, like, you're just supposed to gobble it up. And that's why people make fun of them. It's a consumer culture. That's why people laugh at them. That's why people make fun of this shit. Because it's ridiculous. Well, then, like, at some other point, the world became abso-fucking-lutely stupid, man. It's insane. It's actually insane to fucking do this, man. I digress. I mean, like, I could talk about this all day. I could list out all the different shit. They did the same thing for Cowboy Bebop. One of the most popular animes in the West of all time. At least, when it came out. Even still. They got fucking... You have all this money behind fucking... Not Death Note. Behind Netflix. And you can't even get, like, an outfit that looks true to the fucking character for Faye. You can't. Even her edited outfit doesn't even look at all close. And then you have cringe dialogue like, welcome to the ouch, motherfuckers. Like, it has nothing to do with making her a lesbian in the show. It has nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with they just wrote something bad. It's like if you write a fucking bad essay at school and you get a bad grade for it and you say, well, the teacher's racist. See, joke's on you. My teachers were sexist. And it's fucking ridiculous. It really is. But that's basically how it goes. And that's reality, unfortunately. Reality is just that most of these companies are bought and paid for by fucking ideologues. They're fucking loons. And they only write stuff basically to attack fans who don't like shit products. I mean, you could go anywhere and people don't like shit products. But for some reason, when it comes to entertainment mediums, you're just supposed to live and lap it up. Okay, I mean, it is what it is. And the Japanese are just immune to this because they don't have all this weird shit in their culture. I mean, they have other stuff in their culture that might not be as, like, kosher or great, but the Japanese in general don't have this problem, and they probably never will because their mediums aren't compromised like that. They're very much different in Japan to how we are in America. Anyway, they're remaking The Last of Us 1. I guess it is a remake. They're charging $70 for it. And one of the biggest things that people are giving, like, a reason why you'd want to play it is like, oh, well, you get you get accessibility options. And I find it funny because Resident Evil 8 is getting a bunch of accessibility options and things that you could do. And it's getting it in a free patch. Last of Us 1 already had a re-release on the PS4, which is backwards compatible and got, I think, a special patch on the PS5. So it's basically $70 for a remaster where they could maybe tweak the plot to go better with Last of Us Part 2. That's pretty much it. And, like, I mean, talk about Last of Us at this point after Last of Us 2 is kind of like a lost cause because it's just disgraceful. It's kind of disgusting. Like, Resident Evil is also getting an accessibility upgrade for free alongside the DLC for it in October. It's going to let you change subtitles, the colors, the subtitle background, a permanent reticule on the screen for people who get motion sickness. The speaker name will display in story mode, closed captions, and I think a couple other ones. And, like, that's completely great. And it's free. Whereas they need to charge $70 for Last of Us 2. Actually, it's a Kotaku thing, by the way. Let me pull this fucking up, by the way. Let me do it again. Hold on. God, I hate having to do Twitter because Twitter's layout is so fucking awful that I absolutely hate it. Here we go. So Last of Us 2, sorry, Last of Us 1 is getting a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, the remake's new options are a case for why it needs to exist. And you just go over to Resident Evil, and Resident Evil gives it to you for fucking free. They don't care. They're just like, you know what, here. To help people get into Resident Evil, right? And this is one thing about Resident Evil that I like. You know, I guess they understand that Resident Evil's kind of at that point where it's aged a lot. The plot certainly does not resemble the original. So like they're doing what they can to keep people in. I mean, Last of Us 2 is just like Sony wants to make $70 off fucking people who like Last of Us 1. And like I've seen the lighting, like really the biggest jump from PS4 era to PS5 is the lighting. I mean, that's really it. Like you have better lighting, maybe a higher frame rate, right? Maybe instead of being like 1080 30 or 1080 60 guaranteed. And that's it. That really is it. Like I'm not even joking. Like it's most of these games are going to be fundamentally the same. They're not really going to change much. They might tweak a few things in the story to put it more in line. Like, you know, the cutscene with Abby's father is actually going to be a cutscene with him now versus when before where it was like just a one-off cutscene that was kind of overly dramatic. Yeah. Let's talk about something sad, unfortunately. We'll go to my friend Nibelion because he posts a lot of good stuff. I could just go down him and Wario64's Twitters, basically, for half my podcasting. I guess I could do this. There you go. Let's fucking do that. Sucker Punch clarifies they do not have plans to revisit the infamous or Sly Cooper franchises right now, and that no other studio is working on these IPs either. This is from July fucking 1st. That's how late I am, by the way. But yeah, it's unfortunate. These characters are very special and near and dear, so I never say never. There are no infamous or Sly Cooper games in development. It's fucking tragic, man. It really is. To think that Sly has just, like, disappeared off the face of the earth. I really hate that. It's really unfortunate. I really wish that was not the case. Because, you know, like, now I have the PS5. I have all these consoles. It would be great if, like, once a year we got Sly, Jack, Ratchet on a loop, right? So, like, you know, Sly, there's a new Sly game, and then they take 3 years to develop a new Sly game, and then they take another 3 years to develop a new Sly game, right? Like, if we had done that back in 2007, right? When did Sly 3 come out? 2007? 2005? Oh my god. I'm old. Holy shit, I remember when Honor Among Thieves came out. Yeah, wow, it took them only a year between Sly 2 to get to Sly 3. Wow. Huh. That's fucking crazy. Okay, even better to my point. Let's say they needed a year or two because of all the shit that happened with the PS3 to get shit up and running. Fine. 2008, say they make a Sly game. Okay. Next year after that, they made Ratchet games. I don't know when these Ratchet, I don't know what the timeline is for Ratchet games, right? And whatever. But like, okay, 2009, they make a Ratchet game. 2010, they make a Jack game. Okay, 2011, 2014, 2017, 2020, sorry. You get like 5 extra fucking games almost because it's been that long. It's been that many years. It's like 4 extra games. And that's my thing is like these franchises just lay dormant. Sony has the franchises to become like Nintendo. They just don't want to make anything to do with it. And I really hate that. I wish, now that I finally have all this stuff, it's a shame that like all these games that were out when I was in fucking 5th grade are now like the last of their franchises. And whatever other games they had are like, they had like a Sly like PS Move game, right? Dude, can you even use PS Move anymore? When did Jack 3 come out? I put Jack 32. 2004? Oh, fuck me, I'm old. Are you serious? So what the fuck? No, wait, that's because Jack and Daxter was a fucking 2000 game, right? Dude, I remember when this shit came out. Some dude was telling me about fucking Jack. Man, that was so cool. Yeah, it was Jack 2 was 2003. Was Jack 1 2001? Yeah. Because I remember when this came out, because I remember the commercials and seeing it in, like, stores and stuff. Man. It's fucking tragic, dude. Fucking tragic, dude. Anyway, you get the point that I'm trying to make. It's like one of, like, the top, like, platformers on Sony consoles. They had, like, 3. They had Sly, Ratchet, and Jack. And just, it's a tragedy that they just never really made anymore beyond that. You know, like it's a tragedy we didn't get like more sequels. I mean, Sly got another game, so I guess maybe I'm being a little bit unfair because Sly got a 2013 game. It was fucking 8 years later, but it got a fucking fourth game technically, and it's just a tragedy that there was never anything beyond that. You know, what a fucking disaster, man. Um, yeah, it sucks. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't know what Sucker Punch is working on now, but I mean, you know, after making Ghost of Tsushima, I know they'll make good work, so I'm not really too fucking stressed about it. Naughty Dog is compromised, but fucking Sucker Punch does good work, and I really respect them for that. So, uh, Ubisoft had a whole thing where they were removing fucking digital games. You can't even buy the DLC for it, and I think some of them need the DLC to run. This is like there's a whole rant about this for sure. But realistically, what it boils down to is you just have to own your games physically as much as you can. You need to own your games physically because Lord knows who knows what'll happen. I mean, obviously everything is moving more towards digital, but I kind of like owning all these different games largely because, like, one, is nice to look at. You know, it's nice to be able to walk over to that corner of my room or this corner or that corner and be able to look at all the games I own. You know, like, it's fun to be able to go over there and say, yeah, I own, you know, a whole bunch of Switch games, right? Yeah, I own, you know, like I could look at the rarest games in my collections and stuff like that. Like, I love that shit. That shit's awesome, man. Um, but also because, like, then they'll start to remove games. Like, they'll delist them. You know, they'll have to edit some. Like, I could get editing, you know, music or whatever out of a game, right? Like, GTA frequently gets edited, you know, because they lose the licenses, because they license it for so many years, and then they fucking, you know, they lose it, so they have to go patch GTA 4 and remove the music or whatever. But, I mean, like, the game still works, and the game is still fun. You can still enjoy it. I mean, like, yeah, the music is a vibe for GTA, right? But at the same time, at least the core gameplay remains intact. You know what I mean? Like, the biggest game of this whole Ubisoft removing shit thing is literally that they were going to remove, what is it called? Fuck. Oh, hold on, I have to do this. Literally, they were going to remove Assassin's Creed, Odyssey, not Odyssey, I'm sorry, it's Assassin's Creed Liberation, which is like, that's like the biggest, most popular, well-known game that they were going to do this for. But even still, like, I think it's unfair to then, you know, for if someone wants to play it, right? You want people to get into Assassin's Creed, and then you remove the ability for them to play, like, I wouldn't say it's like a very vital game in the fucking franchise. Like, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. But, like, you're basically saying to them, well, you just can't play Assassin's Creed Liberation. That's pretty much it. And I think that that's unfair, right? It's like, oh, well, you know, you just weren't quick enough to the draw to be able to play Assassin's Creed, so fuck it. You know, so, like, you know, it's not going to stop here, obviously. Like, nothing ever stops right where you know, you think, oh, it'll just be these games. Yeah, it says everybody, and then they pushed it further. I just think it's unfair, especially for a game that's a completely single player, right? Like there's nothing extra about Assassin's Creed, you know, that for the most part, like, almost all the games are single player experiences, so that's the thing. They don't want to go back and make single player versions of these games, and they don't own the rights to stuff, and they'd rather not rebuy the license, so fuck you. And if you own it, they're going to prevent you from playing it. If, heavens forbid, your fucking computer blows up, you'll never be able to download it again. You're just shit out of luck, and that's it. You just never get to play it again. It's a locked content forever. And I think that, you know, we had this with movies where, like, tons of stuff is lost to the annals of time, right? And I think that video games are definitely, they won't get to that point, but I think there's a conscious effort that, like, what happened to movies should not be allowed to happen again to games. Because, you know, people put time and work into these things. You know, you want them to at least be remembered and accessible. And, you know, it just goes back to me always ranting to people about don't sell your shit. Well, I really mean it. Don't sell your fucking shit. I mean, you sell it at your own peril. You know, you can do whatever you want, but you sell it at your own peril that maybe someday you'll want to replay something and you won't be able to do it. You're just going to be shit out of luck. And maybe you're okay with that, you know, but for me, I know that I've sold some of my games and I regretted it almost like the next day, and then I was never able to get a good copy of it again. And that to me is what taught me to stop selling stuff to anybody. It doesn't matter if it's GameStop, Amazon, eBay, local stores, whatever. You know? I always say, fucking, what's it called? that one dude that came in GameStop and was like, "Oh, I have to get rid of all my stuff because my girlfriend told me to." It was like, bro, and this dude brought his whole childhood in that shit. That was depressing. That was one of the darkest days of my life. This poor dude, this fucking dude is over here just letting this woman completely bulldoze his childhood or something. Damn, that is truly tragic. And he does it with a smile on his face. It's tragic, but it's so fucking tragic you have to laugh at it. You kind of have to laugh in the face of absurdity sometimes, because what else are you supposed to do? It's nuts. It's nuts that he came to that. It's ridiculous. Anyway. Lollipop Chainsaw is getting a remake, which is cool. They already talked about how they want to keep it true to the original. They don't want to change anything. They the Japanese know so fucking much that the first thing people are going to think is, well, are they going to tone it down because of how racy the original was, right? Because Lollipop Chainsaw came out in a different social climate, in a different era, and the first thing people are wondering is like, oh my god, are they going to fucking change it? Like, are they going to do something to it to make it a different game? And the Japanese, and I feel kind of bad for them because this doesn't really exist in their, too much in their culture. This is more of an American thing where, like, now we can't have, you know, things like Bayonetta was always being hit for this, but now it's like worldwide. So here's the game designer for Lollipop Chainsaw, and he flat out is like, it's been a week since it's been announced. Many have inquired about the contents of the previous announcement. We'd like to take the time to share our thoughts and intentions regarding the project. The primary goal of Lollipop Chainsaw Remake is to make it so players who wish to play Lollipop Chainsaw can do so easily, not to make a new Lollipop Chainsaw game. Of course, the ideal thing would be to make a remastered version of the original game, changing nothing. We're unable to include 16 of the licensed songs, which are a great part of the original game's feel, so we are instead aiming for a remake that is as close as possible to a remaster. Look at already the intention behind this. Like what I said, music really can set a vibe for a game. We have taken notice that there has been speculation the remake will change the story. We believe Lollipop Chainsaw's story is a huge part of what fans love about the original game, and we, the development staff, feel the same. As such, the story will not be changed in the remake. Additionally, we do not intend to change the aesthetics of the game. The mention of how the game will have a more realistic look in the previous announcement was meant to refer to how we will make use of advanced rendering technology. We do not wish to change Juliet's design, and the assumption we want to is baseless. We are the ones who created Juliet's model data after great trial and error 10 years ago, and feel attached to her more than anyone. Finally, we learned after the announcement that many fans are worried about censorship. We have not yet discussed the issue with platform holders yet. Platform holders, aka Sony. If Sony wants it, Sony can censor it. I mean, it's their console. They could dictate how. They've done it before. They've done it in the past. They don't want to, though. So if Sony says, hey, we'll censor this, I mean, that's just a bad look for Sony. It's not going to put them out of business. It's just a bad look. And I've said this before. I need to fucking find the quote. Sony is afraid of getting fucking Me Too'd for some reason by anime games. And that's why they don't like certain anime games on their consoles and whatnot. And that's why a lot of these dudes have just been going to Steam, going to PC, going to Xbox, going to Switch, right? There's games on the Nintendo Switch that 10 years ago Nintendo would have never let on. They wouldn't have even given you the fucking time of day in the boardroom. Now they're just like, fuck it, put it on. I don't care. Why, like Nintendo is over here just saying, I don't care. Put Wolfenstein in with literal Nazis. Put LA Noire on our console with actual like racism. You know, put all these crazy games that would have been bangers on the fucking PlayStation back in the PS3 day, and not on the Wii at all, even if the Wii could run it. And fast forward, and now the Switch runs it, and they love it, and they want it, and then all the Sony games they don't. It's nuts. All right, we can't say anything on topic. We intend to negotiate with the platform holders to make it so the game can be as close to the original version as possible. It's not on them. All right, did I get cut off? No, perfect. And signed by Lollipop Chainsaw producer Yoshimi Yasuda. Done. I mean, it really is just that simple. And I hope they don't get censored, but I mean, obviously it was such a big deal, right? It was such a overarching sentiment that the producer had to come out and say, yeah, we're not trying to do that. We're not changing the story. We don't intend to change Juliet's model. All we're doing is making it look better. We're adding in, probably, new tracks to keep the feel as close as possible. And if anything gets censored, it's on Sony, right? It's on and I mean Microsoft too, you know what I mean. But let's be real here. If anyone's censoring something, it's probably going to be Sony. Microsoft needs more, so Microsoft probably will not. But who knows? I mean, like, you could have a flat-out sex scene in Last of Us, but if you show anime titties, go to hell. That is effectively the Sony MO. You know, you could have any sort of crazy shit in Last of Us, people getting their heads ripped off, you know, people getting fucking eaten alive, Abby taking it up the ass by cheating on that one fucking dude, or what is it, cucking that one girl, or whatever. And that's cool, but anime titties bouncing around, fuck. Oh my god, it's the end of the world. So, Ubisoft canceled 4 games. They canceled Splinter Cell VR, Ghost Recon Frontline, and 2 other games we never heard about. That's probably not that good for Ubisoft, considering that Beyond Good and Evil is still in the pipeline. I have no idea what the status of the next Assassin's Creed is, other than that Valhalla was a smash hit. Obviously, they've talked about Assassin's Creed Infinity. I'm gonna put sequel. Like, what is the... it gives me Assassin's Creed 2. I'm kind of sad that they're not getting an Assassin's Creed 2 movie. It kind of sucks, because I really was fucking hoping we would. God damn it. Really is tragic. I really wanted Assassin's Creed 2 to come out. Like, I like the movie, actually. Despite what most people think, I actually like it, because they actually reference it later. I actually really liked it as a huge fan, but you can't really explain the story of Assassin's Creed in 2 hours. You were better off just focusing on something very bare bones about it. I have no idea what the fucking sequel is going to be, actually. They kind of imply there will be another story expansion to Valhalla, but I mean, it fucking came out in May. It's now late August, so I don't really know. And I kind of hope that there is, but yeah, actually, hold on. While I'm here, since I was talking about Assassin's Creed earlier, the game had the biggest launch in the... I said loss. It's hilarious because it didn't. It is the second most profitable Ubisoft game of all time. Oh, I fucked that up. The game had the biggest launch in the Assassin's Creed series to date, selling the most copies within its first week and becoming the second most profitable Ubisoft game of all time. That's how fucking powerful Valhalla was. It's kind of crazy, man, and I actually really like it. They have a lot of good people on here. I don't know if it's cut off. Jesper Kidd, who did Darksiders 2's soundtrack. He also did Assassin's Creed 2. And you know, they had the writers for Black Flag and Revelations, creative directors. Like, this game had everything to succeed. Sadly, the gameplay was kind of trash, but whatever. Anyway, I like the story of it, so well, it is what it is. But I do appreciate it, and that's why I liked Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I like, though, this Assassin's Creed trilogy is like ultimately one of my favorite trilogies I think I've played in a long while. And it's crazy because in theory, all 3 of the games have almost nothing to do with each other. But I actually feel like they are tied together by Layla, which is really awesome, and I really love it. I try to tell people all over the place to fucking play Valhalla, and like, none of my friends have beaten it, and it's been almost 2 years. I get really sad. I have no one to fucking gush about the story with. It sucks. It really does. But in any event, yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know what they're gonna do with Assassin's Creed. I hope they don't do some weird shit with it, you know? Because, like, I like it. I don't want them to ruin it. I think they got something good going. They just have to fucking fix it up. I really like playing fucking Assassin's Creed. They just need to stop fucking cucking us out of player choice and the protagonist. Just fucking make us play as a woman and call it a day. I get sick of this shit. You can play as a man, but, you know, there's no female love interests in the game, really. So fuck you. Because we intended for the game to be female-only protagonists. And just fucking force us to play as a woman, dude. Jesus Christ. They're such pussies. Like the name Assassin's Creed is not going to fucking curry enough favor. Dude, these people have, like, hyped themselves to a point where they're like, gamers won't buy a game with women in it. And then Metroid Dread comes out and everyone's fucking having fun with it. You know, like, it's like that one fucking meme where the dude's in the corner at the party. And, like, every game studio is like, oh, gamers are awful, horrible people. And then, meanwhile, people are out here dancing with Tomb Raider and fucking Dread. You know, I'm over here like, I love Dread because Samus gets to do crazy shit. You know, they removed all the stupid shit from Other M. It's just Samus blowing shit up, punching the shit out of people, doing cool combat moves. It's a fucking awesome game. Everybody loved it. It was a fucking magnificent, wonderful time. Best-selling Metroid game ever. No problems at all moving copies of Dread. At all. Godlike. And they deserve every second of it because they put in real work for it. And that's what I love about it so much. And meanwhile, Ubisoft and all these other I don't know if we could do it. And then they write the story and they completely invalidate player choice. It's terrible. Anyway, I've ranted about that. I ranted about that before 1,000 times. That's kind of it. Oh, no. The PS5, because of the inflation that we're having worldwide, which is going fucking insane, the PS5 will be getting a price increase in multiple regions outside the US. If you were around in 06, you'll remember that that's exactly what happened as well. That the PS3 at the time was worth like, I guess by today's standards, like $1,000 probably. It was worth like $600, right? Can I find PS3 launch MSRP? How much did the PS3 cost? It was where was it? It was $500. No, PS3 launch price. Yeah, here we go. The PS3 price at launch was $599, and and the dollar was worth more back in 2006. So between general price increasing and inflation, it was nuts. And yeah, and even here, there's an IGN article. PlayStation 3 launch price was a total shock to Microsoft. Yeah, because it was way too high. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that contributed to people choosing Xbox over PS3. There's other things. You remember back then, it was like PS Live got hacked and credit cards were leaked and they lied about it or whatever, trying to cover it up. It was a whole mess. It was a whole arc of history that is now long since forgotten unless you were around for that. I just feel like after a certain point, like, it's starting to really echo 2006, right? Like, we have tons of fucking financial unease in the world right now, and right? Because, like, that was right around the time of, you know, shit was about to collapse. So, it's kind of interesting to see that they're, once again, increasing the price of something that most people can't even get anyway, which is kind of nuts when you think about it. And yeah, and they're also being sued in the UK. I guess I should bring this up because this kind of matters a little more than a price increase. But if you're outside the US, I'm sorry for your loss. It's fucked, but what can you really do about it, right? Probably nothing. So let me bring this up. We're almost at the end here. Sony is being sued for $5 billion over PlayStation Store prices. Actually, it's more like 5.9. It's closer to 6, but anyway. The plaintiff is claiming that Sony is overcharging consumers and abusing its position as the primary seller of PlayStation games digitally. Now, who knows how this is going to pan out? Obviously, this is really, really early in the PlayStation in the lawsuit. So who knows how this will work out? Don't worry. If and when they lose this, they'll just offset the cost onto you, the consumer, which probably is almost what they're already starting to do by charging people outside the U.S. for more. They want more of your money, so enjoy. Isn't it great to have almost 10% inflation? It's fucking awesome, dude. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's see. GTA 5 getting fucking woke or whatever. I don't see. This is how I know to stay away from it. Or, I'm sorry, GTA 6 is like, I already know that something is just going to go wrong with it. I think that part of the problem with it is, like, I'm all for making game studios, you know, obviously not be Activision Blizzard where they actually abuse their fucking female workers, right? I'm all for that. That's fine. But to transfer that into it, like, you know that GTA 5 is the type of game that would not be made nowadays. They would not allow GTA 5 to happen for one way or another. Because, you know why? Because it was, it made fun of a lot of people that you can't make fun of in today's climate. You just can't. Oh, dude. Oh, God. Hogwarts Legacy is trending now. Fuck me. What happened now? Oh, okay. People are making fun of it. Okay. People are making fun of the people who won't buy it because of fucking J.K. Rowling. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Okay, I thought something like happened with it. It's just people being annoyed. Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy is going to be one of those games that's going to be very, very like controversial. It could be one of the biggest bangers of the year, and it could be completely unrelated to anything to do with Harry Potter as a general story. And I think that they are putting a lot of love and effort into it. But because of J.K. Rowling's political beliefs, for a game that she's really not even fucking involved with, she just made the IP behind it. You know, it's kind of now you see they get mad at us when you say things like Resident Evil doesn't feel like Resident Evil because of the writing. But we're over here basically astroturfing this game to fail months before it's even out. I think it got delayed to next year, right? It's not coming out this year. It got delayed, which is fine, but like you see how like I feel like there's a massive difference there, right? It's okay when their side gets to fucking push games off a cliff, right? Like if Resident Evil the Netflix show at least was well written, right, and still was like whatever sister drama or whatever, at least I could say, well, it was well written. I feel like the characters did what they needed to do. They acted within their their morals or their within their reasoning and personalities and whatnot, right? Like at least you could say that, you know, like I feel like not only is it not well written, it's also not good in general as a Resident Evil piece or as just a thing to watch like at all. You know, and here we are just pushing this game off a cliff because of something J.K. Rowling did. So like, I don't know. I feel like that's the effect that Twitter has on stuff. The internet, YouTube, Twitter, all these things have a massive effect on video games and culture and movies and everything. You know? Very nice. Can't wait to see how it works out. I just know it looks cool. It looks interesting. I'm willing to buy it. I'm willing to give them a shot. So this is something that really, if you talk with most people, probably most people are happy to finally get an open world Harry Potter. I thought they were going to make a Harry Potter game that encompasses like all of the fucking years of the fucking show or of the movies, right? The books. But instead, rather they would, not do that. So it is what it is. Obviously, people read a lot of their politics into this stuff. And not only do they read their politics into it, they kind of want to read their politics out from it onto everyone else, which I think is kind of unfair, right? Like, if you want to support people's rights or whatever, if J.K. Rowling doesn't want to, I mean, she could still make an IP that goes on to be successful. That has nothing to do with her personally. But people on Twitter find things to be mad at and to get annoyed at, so it is what it is. I mean, like, at this point, ranting about Twitter, like, there's a reason why it's the fucking Bird app, because people are just nuts on it. People come on here and post some of the most unhinged shit, and then they don't get banned because it's okay, and we like it currently because it's cool, guys, and, like, the regime fucking backs it, and the fucking people on Twitter love it, so I mean, like, certain things, they Thanos out of existence, they Thanos the mere thought of it. Other things, they're just like, yeah, it's cool, no matter how unhinged it sounds. It is what it is. I mean, like, Twitter is a very unique place. I don't know. Anyway, I just personally know that I'm going to buy it, and it'll probably be just fine, and people are going to enjoy it. So, anyway, I think that's all that I have. Ubisoft canceled 4 games. Yeah, they were going to make a fucking Splinter Cell VR game instead of a new Splinter Cell game. That tells you everything you fucking need to know, right? Like, oh, we're going to make all these shitty side projects instead of a new game. Like, it's like death by 5 cuts, right? Like however many cuts versus just doing the game, right? Because if they just made a Splinter Cell game, maybe give it like 15 levels, maybe add a couple more as DLC or whatever, make them fully fleshed out, different pathways, different gadgets and things you could use and all that stuff, right? Like they'd rather instead make side games, put them in Wildlands, make a VR game for it. Like they have right now. Okay, this is going to be nuts to think. Right now, Ubisoft has almost a complete domination of the stealth game market. Hitman is somewhere in there. Metal Gear is effectively dead. And, like, all these other franchises are just nowhere to be found. They could come out, make a banger, Phantom Pain, inspired, Hitman-inspired Splinter Cell game that takes from its competitors, adds maybe, like, 1 or 2 new things into it. Boom. They're going to sell out. Why? Because they're going to make a game involving Sam Fisher, and there's, like, no other stealth games. Like, what happened to Ubisoft being able to do anything, right? But that's like complaining about Beyond Good and Evil. It's like complaining about wanting a Rayman game. It's I don't know what they're doing. Ubisoft has actually been kind of quiet, right? Like, what was the last game they released, actually, this year? I have no idea. I'm sure there's something, obviously. It's just not something within my scope. Meanwhile, the games I know that they're cooking, Skull and Bones, they did show that off, but they're contractually obligated to actually have to release that game. So, I just feel like you can never go wrong with a single player adventure game. You know, like having an open world, being able to do stuff. Like, you might say, like, the fucking Assassin's Creed open world games are very formulaic. You know, they are very typical open world RPGs. But they work because they're just single player games with quests and things to do and upgrades to get and places to explore. They're just, that's why. That's why that this will never not work as a formula. Because it appeals to so many things. And I always say this when I play games. I'm like, dude, playing Odyssey was like one of the craziest like 2 week periods of my life because I was all over the place. I think it took me 10 days to beat Odyssey. I could look at the achievements. I'm not booting up my PlayStation right now. But like, honestly, it's kind of why I want to buy Odyssey again for the fucking Xbox. I might actually do that. Oh shit. Maybe I will do that. Huh. That'd be interesting actually, and just replay it again. Because I miss playing it. It would be fun to play it now with the fucking expansions. Or not the expansions, but like the patches and shit. I probably wouldn't rebuy the expansions. Odyssey didn't really have great expansions. I'm not going to lie. But I own Valhalla. See, the crazy thing is, I own Valhalla for the for the Xbox Series X. I mean, it came with my Series X. I already owned it, so it was kind of a waste. But it is what it is. Anyway, that is all for me. I hope you guys are having a wonderful August. I'm sorry this podcast was like a month in advance. I will a month in advance. I will make a new podcast document. Like I said, I'd like to do this weekly. You know, I'd like to be able to sit down, shoot the shit, talk about whatever. And next time around, we will probably, hopefully, have some good things to say. I mean, it's unfortunate that Saints Row is probably fucked, but I mean, once again, a company put it there to be fucked. So I mean, it's kind of hard to really. It's hard to feel bad for the company, and it's hard not to feel bad for the people who actually like the franchise and believe in it and want it to come back and be good again. To see this is disheartening. It's soul crushing. So, in any event, take it easy. Have a good one.